to Something for the Turbo, the new weekly podcast brought to you by Unfound, the global platform for the travel-loving cyclist.
Hi everyone, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Something for the Turbo. We, as ever, hugely appreciate the continued support. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe and make sure you're passing the pod as well. Tell all your cycling friends. And if you're on whatever platform you use and there's an option to leave a review, why don't you leave us a kind review? We'd really appreciate that. We've had some lovely ones so far and we've had some lovely feedback. Hugely appreciate all the messages we've received across all the social media platforms, but also on the hub itself. If you aren't aware of what the hub is or you haven't discovered it yet, go and download the Unfound app from Google Play or the App Store, or just go to the website, which is www.unfound.cc. That's www.unfound.cc. It's really easy to register on there and you can join a global community of cyclists. I think we've got people from 160 countries on there now, and you can share rides and photos and share articles, ask questions, whatever you want. It'd be great to get more of you more active on there. We really need some more content, so please do get active on there. Keep posting. We've got lots of passive users, but it'd be great to have some more posts on there. Anyway, probably crack on with today's podcast. I caught up with Rich Lang, who basically ticks every box with regards to the people that we like having on here in terms of topics we like to cover. He's a former Australian pro, having raced internationally with the Australian Institutes of Sport alongside Michal Matthews, Luke Durbridge, Rohan Dennis and others, before racing with Pro-Conti team Rapha in the UK. After making the decision to retire at 24, he studied before setting up a business community in Haute Rouleurs and becoming a coach. It was during this time Rich had the idea to set up Spok'd, making him a tech startup entrepreneur. Spok'd sits nicely as an option between out-of-the-box training plans that you get with Zwift, Trainer Road, Training Peaks and other platforms, and also engaging in a full-time coach. This online training and coaching platform is his mission to make it simpler, more personal and smarter to train and get faster. Rich talks us through all of this, and we also speak to friend of Unfound, Mark Burrows, who's very kindly volunteered to undergo an 8-week training trial of the Spok'd platform. We'll rendezvous in 8 weeks' time to hear how Mark found the platform, the training, and any improvements in his performance. And Rich will also be able to give a detailed breakdown of how compliant Mark was with his training and how he felt Mark got on. Anyway, all in all, let's crack on with today's chat. It's a really interesting conversation, well worth a listen. And we look forward to catching up with both Mark and Rich again in a few weeks' time. Without further ado, let me bring you Rich and Mark. Rich, Mark, thank you both very much for joining us. How are you both doing? You all good?
Going really well. It's sunny up in Manchester, so I can't complain.
I'm good, thank you, Julian.
It's raining down this end of the world, isn't it, Mark?
Been pouring down.
Crazy storms. Look, why don't we start by Rich? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into racing, and you're in Manchester now, but you're originally from Oz, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm a Sydney boy, and what brought me over to the UK was cycling. So I started my cycling career at the age of 16, which is probably quite late in today's sort of standards.
Yeah.
But my old man, he was a rider, sort of Masters rider. He got to sort of Masters World Champ, Aussie Champ, and he just knew how hard this sport is. So he was always sort of delaying me. And I was quite active when I was younger, sort of got into rugby league, did basketball union, but really sort of forced to, Dad, I want to ride my bike now. So yeah, I really had to sort of...
He was kind of keen to keep you away from racing bikes as a youngster. He wanted to give you the option to play a lot of different sports, or he didn't really want you pursuing that professional cycling career?
I think if he knew I was going to start cycling, he knows how hard the sport is.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And to reach, the top levels, you have to commit everything. So if he wanted me to do that, he wanted to make sure that I was ready and, really ready for it.
Yeah.
But it probably helped me, in hindsight, but it probably sort of missed out a little bit on the sort of skill side of things. Yeah. But it wasn't too bad. But, I started at 16 and, you just always just about sort of progression. So, you started the local scene, you started in D grade, don't know how to race, and then you moved to C, B, A, and then started into regional, sort of state level. So a lot of sort of state track champs. So I started on the track and then sort of did the road season.
Yeah.
But it's only when I probably got to about age 20 that I could climb with the main bunch. And I sort of had my breakout year in Australia where one Aussie became Aussie champ on the track in the Omnium, and then won a stage race. I won a stage in every sort of tour in Australia, and that sort of forced my way into the Aussie squad because when I was sort of like for junior worlds, sort of that anywhere you sort of I think 16 to 17, there's like so much pressure to go to junior worlds, and I cracked under that pressure a little bit, and we think, oh, that's it, my career's over. But it's like, no, take a step back, reassess, and when again I was able to sort of force my way into the Aussie team. So I, as a third year under 23, was able to ride for AIS and did 2 years in Italy, which was definitely an interesting experience.
Yeah, amazing. But you had a meteoric rise then from starting cycling at 16 to being at that level at 20. It must have been, talk us through how it progressed so quickly.
Well, it didn't feel like it was quick. I can still
No?
like think back when I was like 18 doing like a national road race and thinking, yep, there's a hill coming up. I'm going to get dropped here. That's to force my way, like the sliding glide where you got to get to the front of the bunch before the climb. And then hopefully when you get to the top of the climb, you're at the back so you can hang on.
God, yeah.
But it's just all about progression. And I think, cycling is just, year after year, the training that you do this year, benefits you next year. And, it's just sort of continuously absorbing that workload. And maybe that's sort of why I started a little bit later. So maybe it took a couple of years to sort of get to that 2021. But my big year, Europe was definitely an interesting experience where I went over to Italy. So it's sort of always done, you've done the local, regional, state, national level. So always worked my way up through the scenes, get to Europe. Wow, what a shock to the system that was. That was literally, you look at the road race and you think, okay, where's Gruppetto going to form? Yep, that's where I need to be. That's how first year was. And I was in a phenomenal year where we had Michal Matthews, Rohan Dennis, Michael Hepburn, Luke Durbridge. Yeah, those guys are looking back on now, they didn't do anything special in their training, but they were just sort of natural athletes. They could just absorb a phenomenal amount of workload and just respond to it.
And you could see that even at that young age, you could see they had something a little bit different.
Yeah, it's I think it was Tour of Japan or something, where Michal Matthews did something to his back a couple of weeks before the tour, hardly touched his bike 3 weeks before the race. And then I think he ends up winning 2 stages or something like that.
Wow. Yeah, genetics play a big role, right?
100%. But I did my first year and I got battered. I got caught in a bad cycle where it's I'd get dropped and I think, I just don't have enough energy. And then, on stage racing, you got all the buffets, you're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner. And I actually put on weight throughout the season and I got back to Australia, got back into the routine because it's definitely quite a culture shock. In Australia, we're quite isolated and then going all the way to Europe, different time zones, catching up with family and friends back home. So it took some adjustment, but eventually got back home, regrouped, got back into a routine, really sort of focused on the food, the training, and came out in the next year having a sort of a ripper start of the season where I ended up winning Oceania road race. So in 23 and elite. And then a week later, winning a big Italian race in Piva. But then it was only a couple of weeks later where I had a big crash and sort of did my knee in. And that was sort of had to have 2 months off the bike. And I was like, geez, this can't be happening now. Last year under 23, there's so much pressure. We want to always aspiring, to go world tour or Pro-Conti. Damn, this cannot happen now. But I think we as cyclists, no matter what level we are, we're always trying to focus on the processes and, looking for the opportunities in different situations. So I may have did my knee and I can't ride, but, I can focus on my flexibility, focus on my mental state, focus on my core and just slowly just go through the process of that, which is a little bit frustrating at times because, trying to get to that next level, you're trying to put out feelers, trying to speak to sort of teams and you're sort of having some conversations, but it's you need one more result. You need to show consistency through the year. You need a top and tail of the year. So regrouped. Okay, second half of the season, I'm going to be going for it. And I was quite fortunate having won Oceanias. That secured my world spot for Copenhagen for the road race.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the guys so the team goes, okay, you can do Tour l'Avenir and the Giro Val d'Aosta, which is pretty much the highest level races you can do as an under 23 rider. I thought, perfect. This is unreal prep for Worlds. So slowly build up form, get to Giro Val d'Aosta. Look, I'm not a natural climber. I'm more like a fast all-rounder. I can climb, but I'm not a climber at all. So I was sort of top 40, top 50 amongst these races, sort of in the real hilly days. Good result. I got top 10 in a stage, and then come Tour l'Avenir. Couldn't believe it, where I had two nerves dying in my mouth. So I don't know whether you've ever had your teeth around the nerves dying there. But I had to have 2 root canals and 2 crowns put on.
Oh, bloody hell.
But it's through that process of the nerves dying where I couldn't even go to sleep during the night. The only way to have no pain in the mouth is to have water in the mouth. And it's not practical trying to go to sleep like that. So it was almost just fizzled out a little bit, where got to the last stage of l'Avenir, but didn't really do anything throughout the whole race. And then Worlds sort of crashed out. And it was quite a really disappointing back end to the year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that was a kind of a pivotal year in terms of, because it's so competitive trying to make it, isn't it? And trying to break through.
Yeah, 100%. Cycling's sort of that weird sport where, especially, sort of under 23s, under 19s, where everyone's, looking to go world tour, but it's it's a team sport, but it's still an individual based sport that, as an under 23, if you ride on the front, for every single race, you may not get noticed. You still have to produce results. Or get us really good. Yeah. So it's always that fine line where we're always wanting, to produce those results. But quite fortunate, before I signed with AIS, did Sun Tour in Australia, and that's where I got to sort of meet John Harity and Christian House, and stayed in contact. And it was quite fortunate enough that finished under 23s. Reached out to John, and there was an opportunity for Rapha Condor Sharp. I haven't even heard of Rapha, or really heard of the UK scene over here.
Okay.
But for my personal situation where, my girlfriend's Aussie and she's now my wife, she can come over, she can work, and I can still, have a high level race program, still racing abroad. So it's a really good balance. And I always thought, I'm coming over to the UK just to, do cycling, and I'll eventually end up back home. But here I am now, 8 years later. Pardon?
That was 2012 that you
Correct.
came over to the UK. And Christian would have still been racing then, wouldn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we had your former teammate on a couple of weeks ago then, Ed Laverack.
Yeah, I listened to that podcast. It was a good one. He was on the team for 6 years.
Yeah. Had a good stint there. So how did you find it arriving over here, apart from wet?
Oh, another culture shock. Training wise, the roads over here are so dead. So
yeah, they're slow roads, aren't they? Yeah.
John lives in Cheshire, so we sort of came over there, rented a room from him, and then we sort of moved into sort of South Manchester. So we're only sort of 40 minutes, then you're in the peaks. But back home, is very bunch orientated. So we do Klutzy in the morning. So you out of bed, maybe 5:15, meet the bunch 5:45 or something, or 6 o'clock. And then, there's 100 riders. You can do 5 hours, still average over 30. And then you race in the evening. So that day, you might get 7.5 hours in the saddle, over 200 Ks.
Where in Sydney were you, Rich? Were you north or south?
Inner West. So
Inner West. Okay.
It's about half an hour from the city centre.
Yeah.
So Klutzy was in King's Cross. So you sort of meet there, and it's just 100 riders just turn up. We're having a coffee before the ride, and then just away you go. And it's so you could do big Ks in back home. Roads are fast. Get over here. You try and do 2 5-hour or 3 5-hour days back to back. You're feeling it. It catches up with you.
Yeah.
And even just that was just couldn't get my head around it. And I kept cooking myself.
And how did you find the racing?
Aggressive. It was good racing. It took a little bit just to get used to the scene, but I really enjoyed the racing. It's sort of my type of races where not super hilly, but it's quite lumpy, and it's just on from the go. But you still had to watch because it was very team orientated. As soon as the right numbers got in the break, that was it. Race shuts down.
Yeah. Cool. So you mentioned then, obviously, it was difficult to get sort of back-to-back 5-hour days. How did you address that? I mean, had you always been very structured with your training, or is that when you really started to pay more attention in terms of how you were training from a structure perspective? When did that come onto your radar?
I think I always train with, structure. I always had a spreadsheet and documented my training. Mm-hmm. I think what I always got caught up in the cycle of is that sort of more is better, and that, you ramp up the training, your body responds, you're putting out some, good numbers, even with heavy fatigue, and you think, I'll just push it that a little bit more. And, and then before you know it, you're in a hole. And then the only way to get out of the hole is to rest. And so you rest your way out of it, and the legs start feeling good, and you're producing really good numbers again. And then it's you get caught in that cycle again. Yeah.
Well, from my perspective, it's quite nice I suppose it's quite nice to hear pros fall into the same mistakes that I think a lot of amateurs fall into.
Oh yeah, I think because we always want more, and it is that fine line between giving it everything and then just holding something back so you can have sort of good legs for the race. Because I was thinking back of this because sometimes I coach a couple of other riders, and we get used to having a certain level of fatigue in the legs. And when that level goes, we feel like we're losing form, when in fact, we're just recovering.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels counterintuitive, doesn't it?
100%. But when you train hard, the way to improve is through the rest.
Yeah. So you raced over here, what, 4 or 5 years, or does that matter?
I did 2 years, so 2 and a bit years, where did year with Rapha, year with Team Rally. And then at the age of 24, I was going to ride just sort of more a lower level sort of team, but still be able to do the Prems and sort of Nat Bs. But sort of a sponsor fell through with with the team, and I wasn't going to ride for free. And I just sort of got to a point where it's I've sort of given everything to the sport. I probably missed the boat, probably maybe mentally wasn't strong enough to sort of reach the top level. And I was sort of at a crossroads where, do I continue becoming a good UK professional rider? And, you can do that to say 30, 35, or do I, pull the pin on it now and, try enter the real world, so to speak. And I decided, okay, I'm just going to ride for fun. And I'm going to try, do something within the real world.
Nice. So what did you do?
Yeah, well, put together my CV. I'm like, well, I don't even have enough experience to work in a coffee shop. But our skill set as well as riders, or, people striving, for a goal is that, you're resilient, you're persistent, you're driven. So you are quite hireable. But I was going to work at Holland and Barrett during the day and then work in a wine bar in the evening. But quite luckily, sort of a PT job popped up. Okay. So I became a part-time PT. Really passionate about health and fitness. So I worked in a boutique PT gym for about sort of 6 to 8 months. And then, I was quite fortunate. I sort of met a couple of individuals and that provided the opportunity to build my own business. So I built a business called Haute Rouleurs, and that was a business community in Manchester that we did corporate events, overseas travel, and that's what it really sort of started my online coaching sort of business. Yeah, so and this is where the Spok'd idea came about. Where
okay, I was going to say, so you started in that, and then sort of Spok'd came from that.
Yeah, so started at Rouleurs. It was always going to be a lifestyle business. So and I left university when I was 18, 19 to go ride in Italy. So I thought, okay, I'll just go back to uni. I'll go do nutritional sciences. So I went to MMU, did 1 year nutritional sciences, got a first, but I was like, I'm not necessarily interested in coaching the elite in nutrition. I'm more interested in, just sort of, the cycling enthusiast, trying to get the fundamentals in there, habit building. I think, do I really need a degree for this? And I was also interested in business. So I flipped my degree. I was able to take my credit points in Australia and move into second year business and marketing. So sort of did business and marketing, but it was through that time. So doing Haute Rouleurs, so doing all the coaching, the events, studying university full time. I sort of got to a point within my coaching career where it's like there's only a certain level of personalization you can give to a rider because, time restricts you. Otherwise you start, okay, it's more like template-based training, but, then you lose a personalization. And then I'm thinking from a rider's perspective that having a personalized coach is expensive. When we think, you got family, you got work, you got cycling. And then within that cycling, you want the events, you want the bikes, you want the kit, nutrition. And then it might become, okay, coaching. And, to have a personalized coach, you're looking at 150 pounds a month at a minimum.
Yeah.
And through my coach, I was thinking, well, you go through a lot of repetition. What are the phases? What are the goals? What key demands do we need to, hit, through this training plan? And I was good friends and still good friends with Chris Newton. We thought, I wonder if we could sort of automate this process. So, quite fortunate that we're able to get the original concept built by a Manchester agency. So started to sort of building these algorithms. But I made every mistake building a tech product to start off with. Didn't really get many sort of riders involved. We thought we sort of knew everything. We sort of knew what sort of rider it would be. And it was sort of almost like a muddled product. So the vision was there, but we couldn't execute on it. And so we sort of took it to a few riders once we sort of finished it, and it just flopped. But what we sort of learned is that, with coaching is that you have the data side, the algorithms, but what's probably even equally as important is the softer side, is how do you communicate the training? How do you give the feedback? How do you give perspective? How do you motivate?
Yeah.
And probably that's even more challenging than the data side.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
So it's sort of been, Spok'd's been about for 3 years,
Okay.
but really only in the market for the last 12 months.
So launched 12 months ago. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about the platform and how it works and who it's for, really?
Yeah. So Spok'd is an online cycling coach. So our ambition is to make it simple to train smarter. So the way it works is all done via algorithms, and you set up your own personalized plan. So you tell Spok'd, what is your goal? When can you train during the week? So you can adjust your availability anytime. You link your account, so it collects your data from Strava, and you can push your workouts into Garmin, and you set your fitness level. So that's just setting your zones. And if you don't know your zones, you can just simply train by feel. So that's RPE, rate of perceived exertion. And so every week you get a new program, and every week's program is sort of based on 4 variables. So it looks at plan versus actual. So the plan time that you said versus, what did you actually do? So it's about trying to get that balance between volume and intensity. Every planned session has a perceived RPE score or intensity score. So it looks at, perceived intensity versus actual intensity, and then it factors in your sleep and your energy levels. So based on those 4 variables, it will adjust next week's training plan.
Amazing. So sleep and energy levels, that all goes into all part data entry points as part of the algorithm as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think for the longest time, we were just chatting off air, weren't we? That I think that, you have, obviously there is a market for all of these things, but I do think there is a big market for a product like this. So if you've been using a out the box training plan, which has sort of been designed generically for a huge population, it's not personal, but it may work to you, but to a point where you feel like you've hit a plateau, or you need something a little bit more personalized, you've got busy sort of life and family, then something like this gives you that sort of personal touch without going the extra mile for coaching, I suppose. That's the market you're aiming for, is it?
Correct, yeah. So it's sort of that, not necessarily sort of a stepping stone, but it's another option for riders. So what we're trying to bring is, the personalization, but also the accessibility of those training templates.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, this is probably a good opportunity to bring Mark in as well. Mark's very kindly been sat on the call as well. So what we thought we'd do when Rich and I spoke prior to recording was find a willing volunteer who would join us, who's been training in a structured way, who we could put through the Spok'd platform for a number of weeks, and then we're going to record again in a few weeks' time to see how Mark got on. So, Mark, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our willing volunteer. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. No problem. It's a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Good. Well, look, before Rich sort of talks you through Spok'd, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you've trained historically or over the last couple of years? Do you use structured training? What's been your sort of process?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I have used structured training. I mean, I'm probably your sort of classic, mid-40s family man. I cycle sort of 7 to 10 hours a week. I go for those sort of big rides with mates on the weekend. And then I do my structured training during the week. And I've been using one of the well-known training apps, which is very structured, a lot of interval training and, sort of following, your weekly TSS scores. And actually, I've also used Training Peaks to sort of monitor, my training load and try to work out, look at my fitness and fatigue scores and trying to sort of work out where I am and how I feel and where I need to sort of draw back my training. But, I think the last year I got my fitness to a good level, but I think I definitely was reaching a point of sort of plateauing, and I felt like I couldn't sort of grow any further. And I think that was mainly down to the fact that I just always felt fatigued, if I'm perfectly honest. I just always felt knackered, and I didn't really know, I probably wasn't, training optimally. I was sort of, I've really taught myself. I've never used a coach. And so, I probably wasn't doing a great job of it, if I'm perfectly honest. I probably learned some of the sort of, the bad habits of just sort of pushing hard all of the time and not resting enough.
There you go, Rich. Is that the sort of prime target by the sounds of things?
Yeah, there's a couple of principles like within the training is sort of having that confidence to really make your stuff easy and to sometimes step off the bike feeling like you can do more, because it is a nice feeling to, ride hard, feel like you've done a workout, but that only gets you so far. And, like you've said, Mark, it's sort of you form plateaus.
Yeah.
So the goal with structured training is to sort of get that polarized effect. So where, when you're endurance stuff, you really keep that endurance. So it's almost like you're just picking your nose, just tapping along. But what that enables you to do is that when it comes to the top end threshold VO2, you can really rip it, really dig deep, and you really get the benefits that way. And so you're making sort of smarter use of that sort of 7 to 10 hours that you have per week.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing, isn't it? It's sort of easing off and not pushing it. I mean, I'm the sort of person I just always like to be pushing myself, and I think certainly the structured program that I've been using in the past has always been about sort of build, push. It's all about the sort of how much intensity you're doing over the week. And in this particular app, there's very little sort of, lower zone level type of work. And I guess, my body it felt like my body wasn't really recovering properly. I mean, certainly when I was recovering, when I did just sort of ease off the training, felt like I was, I had a lot of energy again, but I wanted to feel that more often, if you know what I mean. I just fatigued too often.
Rich, that's a good point. I mean, sorry to interject there. Why, for those people listening why don't you tell everyone the importance of Zone 2 riding? Because I think people, it's hard to be that disciplined, particularly around the zone 2 bit. Everyone wants to go hard or get stuck in that zone 3, 4 junk miles.
Yeah, I think we've just got to frame zone 2 in the way that it benefits your top end work, in that, you're doing it for a reason. Even though it's easy, you got to have that perspective to say, okay, I'm having an easy session now because it's Tuesday, because I know Thursday I've got a tough session, and I know if I take it easy now, I'm going to be able to really dig deep on that Thursday session. And also with those easy sessions, it probably allows you to sort of, mix around with your nutrition also. You may try to do on your low intense days, maybe do a low carb ride, or, or mix it, play around with your nutrition, see how your body reacts.
Yeah. Okay. And here's a question to you then. Just when you were riding as a pro, how much of your sort of week, sort of out of season, was low intensity sort of zone 2 riding?
A lot of it was just sort of steady away in the bunch, just tapping away. So there's sort of, it's the season, so you have your race season. So it's almost like race recover, and you're not really sort of progressing the training. It's like taper in, recover, taper in. But with the off season, it's like, okay, so we know the race is going to start in February, and you just sort of slowly build for February. But we're quite fortunate, in Australia, that our off season's the summer, and then you got the summer crits. So our training would be, bunch, tap away, get some hours in, but then we'd have the crit, and the crits, that's where we'd get our intensity. But it's very much the goal where you want to feel like you're just underdoing it slightly. You don't want to feel like you're maxing out all the time, because otherwise you're just going to fizzle out. Yeah. And that sort of having the confidence to feel like, okay, I could do more, but I'm happy here. The numbers are good. And this sort of ties me into, what we're trying to achieve with Spok'd is that, I see, there's fitness numbers, and it's like people are chasing a number, and that rewards, people who are consistently riding, putting in hours, doing the hard training, because it accumulates a lot of intensity and the TSS points. Yeah. But that leads you into sort of making every workout hard, just because you want to get 70, 80, or, this 90 fitness level. I'm a big believer in, using benchmarks to measure progress. So, what is your goal? So you just say, that's the tap. So it's going to be an endurance-based benchmark. So it could be a 10-minute to 20-minute benchmark. And you test that more frequently. Yeah. Or even if you do, half of it, just to give you an idea of the legs. Because I know, through the experience and talking to riders, that if you improve your 20-minute marker, but your fitness number is going down, what one would you rather have? And that's the question.
Yeah. So Mark's going to sign up, or he has signed up with Spok'd, and we're going to put him on, is it 8 weeks, did we decide?
Yeah, 8 weeks.
Yeah. And what's that going to look like?
But yeah, I believe, Mark, if you signed up, we're going to go with the FT builder plan.
Yeah, that's right.
And so with that 8 weeks, so every plan, works through the training phases. So you'll probably fall into sort of the build 2, build 3 with a 1 week taper at the end. And that taper is all about priming you for the next 20-minute test. So what I would suggest is, before you start, is ride a 20-minute test, or even just maybe even ride like a 12-minute one, because I believe you've been riding for a few years now, is that you'll be able to gauge, where you're at. If you were to do a 12-minute test, within yourself, how, whether you could hold that or not. So we have a before marker, and you may even do, a 10-minute test 4 weeks in. It's not necessarily, you don't need to ride the 20 minutes. It's just to sort of give you an indication, am I on or not? And then at the end, we'll retest.
Okay. And are those tests included in the online platform, or should I just do an FTP test and then, input the data once I've done that?
We don't necessarily recommend when to do the tests, but we have a lot of communication around through sort of the emails and the social and within the community of when is the best time to do the test. So within the taper periods, we're starting to, let's take a step back. So when you're training and you're adjusting your availability, you can change it however way you want. You can do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Spok'd will give you a plan to suit your availability. But when it comes to the taper, we almost have like a sort of a semi-fixed taper period, where we're trying to, through the taper period, make you familiar with the taper period, so you can identify the sensations and the numbers. So if you were to do this taper period again, you can sort of, compare it over time.
Yeah, understood.
So it's continually evolving, basically.
100%. So, mate, I'm not saying Spok'd is at the level, we'll have the backing or the financial ability of, say, Swift or Trainer Road or the larger partners out there. But we have just closed a round of funding.
Congratulations.
Which will allow us to sort of take some big step changes within the platform. So And, our core team is that I'm on it full time. We have a full time developer. We have a great tech network, and we also have fantastic, with coaches. So we've got Emily Nelson and Mark Stewart, who are mentors part of the community, with Chris Newton, and even just the rider community on Facebook. So it's almost like, we're like, an early stage tech business that's growing, and that's going to be making some big changes over the next few months.
Amazing. And tell us a bit about the vision then. So why don't we go backwards actually? Why don't you tell us about the journey to where we're at the moment, the sort of ups and downs, and how obviously you had this fantastic idea a couple of years ago. You wanted to get it going. Where do you start? How's the journey been? You've got some great coaches on board. Talk us through it all.
The journey's been super tough. I think just because what we're trying to execute, from, onboarding a rider, from setting a goal to all the way to achieving your goal, there's a lot of sort of scenarios that a rider goes through, and is trying to cover every single one. So the last sort of 2.5 years been really sort of focused on the back end algorithms to make them as flexible as possible for the rider. But as it's been in the market now for about sort of that 12 months, we've learned a lot from a front end perspective in terms of, what are you looking for? What data are you craving? So we, our values is, it's been smart and simple. So it's that simplicity, is hard to achieve, but I really like the challenge. Yeah. So we don't want to, be a Training Peaks or Today's Plan where, it's data heavy and it's a fantastic platform, to dig and drill into your data. We just want to sort of take a higher level view and just show, data points that sort of move the needle, and it's enough to give you confidence to go, yep, this training is working for me.
Fantastic.
And so what we're at the moment is that I'm personally sort of designing sort of Spok'd V2, and hopefully take it to the market sort of early next year.
Fantastic, brilliant. And you've got how many athletes are you sort of working with at the moment? How many athletes have you got on there?
Well, we definitely have a few hundred on the platform at the moment, which is really nice. But it's been difficult in terms of raising awareness, but being very fortunate that we've been able to partner with some really fantastic organizations and brands. So we're the smart training partner for Welsh Cycling Federation. And just recently, so with COVID, and then all the events went to pop. So it gave us the opportunity to sort of work on the youth side of cycling and look at their sort of pathway system. So if we look at the pathway system, there's sort of number of stakeholders. So you have, the Welsh cycling coaches who look after the top 10, 15%, trying to, take them, further through the pathway. You have Go Ride coaches who are generally parents who work full time and maybe done, level 2, level 3 BC course, but they don't have the time to, to write individual plans. And then sort of parents can come from various backgrounds. So some do have a cycling background, but I think majority don't come from a cycling background. So there's an opportunity there that we've sort of done a very small pilot, working with a couple of riders and parents and the coaches to bring Spok'd into play. And it's sort of exposing more riders to structured training. So, trying the polarized effect, the benefits of rest, benefits of perspective, to try, increase the level as a whole.
Increase the education around it as well.
100%. So, we're at Spok'd, we're not all, it's not about, suffering and, being, the ultimate and being the super best, but it's taking more of a holistic perspective. Yeah. So, trying to get the key principles in your cycling, look at your environment, the framing, the referencing, and the enjoyment of it all. When I reflect upon my career, when I rode the best is when I enjoyed riding the bike, when it didn't feel like a chore.
Yeah. And you mentioned that earlier, you've always been interested in sort of the habit forming piece as well, which is why you're taking how athletes are feeling, sleep quality. That's also integral to the process, isn't it?
100%. So it's like, happy mind, fast legs.
Yeah. Too true. Well, look, Mark, when we come back in a few weeks, it'd be great to get your sort of take, not only how it's affected your performance, but also in terms of how you found the interface, the experience, the community, really, so we can articulate to everyone listening who might be interested in this kind of platform, the experience that you've had.
Sure. Of course, be a pleasure.
I really look forward to it.
Cool, Rich. Have you got any questions for Mark, or that you want to sort of ask publicly, or is there anything else you want to bring up or raise or address?
Well, have you done a 20-minute test recently?
No, I haven't done one for a while, so I probably should start off by doing one.
And how many hours are you going to be commuting to the bike?
So I reckon probably about 7 to 10 hours roughly. I mean, I tip, obviously the week from week changes, but I reckon probably, around 7 hours is realistic.
Yeah. And what would success look for you at the end of that 8 weeks?
Success for me is an improvement in my power numbers and also just enjoying being on the bike more, just feeling stronger. And, that feeling of feeling stronger, if you know what I mean. That's what I'm sort of after, really. I mean, I had a good year last year. And I was happy with, where I was, but certainly this year has been more difficult with lockdown and no events and no targets being in place. So, yeah, I think, to sort of, like I say, to feel stronger.
Yeah. One last question. Is there any areas in cycling you want to learn more about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, I think for me, this is probably good timing because I'm definitely, if I was to have a personal coach, I've never had one, I would definitely be talking to that coach about fatigue and how I manage fatigue. And it's been something that I've been trying to sort of understand myself through the structured programs that I've been doing, because feels like fatigue is the thing that I've always been battling with. And I've always sort of questioned how on earth do the professionals do this over and over again? Yes, obviously physiologically there's some differences and, been training all their life, but I think managing the fatigue is something, like I say, that I've always found difficult. And that could be my nature, that I don't sort of sit back and relax when I should be, or it could just be that I've just I'm following the wrong training program and using the wrong apps. Maybe they just don't work that well for me.
And how are you managing the fatigue now, or before you're following the plans?
When I'm following the plans, I think basically I just sort of plow on through it and just keep on going. And then if I have an event coming up, or if I have a big ride that's coming on the weekend, I do typically say, right, I just need to rest, because I know through experience that, I'm not going to perform my best if I don't just take some time off. But the problem is I haven't been taking enough time off when I'm doing my structured training. So I'm probably not been letting my body recover and rejuvenate and, rebuild the right muscles. And so the training's been harder than it needs to be, if you know what I mean. It's been more of a drag. And actually, I think this year it's got to the point where I sort of feel a little bit like, well, do I really want to do this training today? I'm not actually enjoying it that much.
Yeah. No, and I think when you get to that point of like, if the enjoyment's gone, it's like, oh, I'll just either have a super easy session or don't ride at all or do something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it strange because it does almost, we all love the sport of cycling, but when you start structured training, it's easy to slip into a bit of a process where it almost becomes addictive and you're worried about missing sessions. And if I look back and think about all the riders I've raced with, the ones that sort of rode at a very high level as youngsters and came through systems, they were always the best at sort of knowing when to rest, even if it seemed crazy. You're like, why? It was Saturday, you got to ride, we got to go out. And they'll be like, nah, today's not good, I need to take a day off. But they just seem to know their body that much better. But I think for a lot of people that seems so unnatural or illogical. It doesn't seem the right thing to do. Why would you not go out? Why would you take a rest day?
Well, it's what you said earlier, Richard. I mean, it was, you sort of think that more is better. And so the fear of not doing a session, you think, oh, I'm just going to start going backwards, and I think that's certainly for me, just being fixated on the numbers, looking at, I'm not wanting my power to sort of go down. So it's just like, I've got to do this training session. I've just got to keep on plowing through. And sometimes it'll be okay and I enjoy it. But I think, like you said earlier, more is not necessarily always better. And sometimes you just got to scale it back. So I think that's going to be my big challenge for this this trial, is to sort of really make sure that I'm disciplining myself and I'm, scaling back and resting when I need to rest and training in the zones that I've been given, and not going out and just smashing it up because I feel like when I'm on the road, I've just got to get the highest power number I possibly can get. And that equals, improvement. So, I think that's probably going to be the challenge for me, is just disciplining myself in that respect.
100%. I think it's like controlled discipline, because for me, a structured training plan is something that fits around you. And so if you, feeling good and you want to do, say, a Swift race, or, you go out on the chain gang and you've got a, I don't know, say 3x8 threshold efforts, I'd want you to go out on that Swift race, or I'd go out on that chain gang. So in Spok'd, we have a concept called a free ride. So it's on that day, you just add a free ride and you upload your workload into that. And what that ensures is that workload that you've done for this week will be adjusted next week. So just say you've overcooked your VO2 and your anaerobic capacity, so you really sort of max top end work, well, you're going to have less of that next week to ensure you don't overcook it.
And that's perfect. And that's exactly what, the other programs sort of don't do for you. You have to end up sort of deleting a session or moving them around, trying to figure out, okay, well, what have I missed and what, where am I? So I think I guess that's what you get from, usually get from a personal coach, right? And this is what software is really going to offer. And I think for me, that could be really beneficial.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Rich, what tell us about your own riding at the moment? Are you still racing? Well, not racing obviously, but you're still riding for enjoyment. But are you using your own product? Are you doing structured training?
Yeah, I was at sort of the start of lockdown. I was following the plan. Did 3 plans, so sort of trained for about 8 to 12 weeks, and yeah, form was good. I was sort of able to essentially, like, for me, my motivation is not to race because I'm scared now. I don't want to take the risk, but I'm interested in, like, going for those KOMs. That sort of is a bit of competitive. So I was able to get to a level where anything for that 10-second to 4 minutes in the flats, I could sort of pop it off. But having just closed around, all my focus now is back on the business.
Yeah, of course.
So
what kind of hours are you doing a week?
Well, on the bike or work?
Yeah, I know, I'm sure the work is a lot, but on the bike. I'm
trying to stay consistently sort of anywhere, say it's low, but like 3 to 6 hours.
Okay.
So if I can get a frequency of sort of 2 to 3, I'm quite happy with that. So for me, like my level, all I just want to be able to do is just have a solid 2-hour ride and then have coffee cake at the end.
That's my kind of riding. Yeah. So look, obviously we're gonna put all the details for Spok'd into the show notes. If people are curious, do you have a sort of help page or a chat that people can come and ask questions before signing up? What's the process for someone that's interested and got a few questions before they sign up, or is there a trial period? Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so to sign up, go to Spok'd.com and then just press get started. So there's a 14-day free trial. We don't ask for your credit card up front. So you can pop in your email, your password, and away you go. But if you do have any questions, you can reach out to us at Get Spok'd on the socials, so on Instagram, or you can drop me an email at hello@spoked.com. I'm more than happy, to organise a chat, and we can just talk about your cycling and how we can help you.
Excellent. We'll get all that in the show notes. So Mark, you've got a nice 8 weeks block now. You can't let us down. You've got to see it through.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll be training hard.
What we'll do, we'll come back and we'll record another show in those 8 weeks, and we'll talk about how you found the platform and the progress you've made, and it'll be good to get some feedback. And just to sort of stress that Mark is a friend of mine, no connection to Rich. I wanted to find someone completely independent, so this is a true test.
Looking forward to it.
Excellent. And Rich, have you been enjoying the racing starting back up again? Do you still follow it?
Oh, yeah. No, I watched Strada, I watched Milan San Remo.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's your take on how the races have started? Obviously, the pros don't normally get this opportunity to be so structured with their training for such a sustained amount of time. Normally, it's sort of race season, right? So do you think we're seeing that in some of the race results we're seeing?
Well, it's been interesting to sort of see who's on and who's not. And, like obviously like the pinnacle for a lot of the teams is the Tour de France. And we can see now that, Lotto are like on it. Their core climbing team is just smashing it. And then Ineos, right? It's like, you got Bernal, but where are the other guys? Not there. But you can't discount Ineos because they just have a knack for peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
But it's like, what's the tour now? 4 weeks away or something?
Not even, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, and they looked struggling the other day, and the art of peaking, and there's obviously a lot of science. But do you feel that, like, what's the difference between team to team? Obviously, you've got different groups of coaches, but like, are they taking different approaches, or what's the differentiation between different training approaches for some of these teams and riders?
I would think the training approaches are sort of very similar. What are the key demands? What are the key climbs? What power do we need to push up there to, achieve, a top 3 result? But I think probably the teams with the bigger budgets, they're probably exploring a lot more in sort of the nutrition, the mindset, and sort of looking at, other things, what like Dave Browse has coined the term, marginal gains, that, what's going to bring that 0.5%, 1%, to the big, to the race result. But I think the fundamentals is probably very similar from team to team, but probably the budget just allows them to sort of do those extra things.
The bits. But in terms of coaching per se as well, obviously looking for marginal gains in everything from pillows to food to everything. But just on the pure coaching science, has that evolved in the last, 10, 15 years, or is that continuing to evolve? What's the latest on that side of things?
I think we can measure a lot more now.
So it's the data points, more data points, right?
Yeah. But But I think also what makes the sport so beautiful is that, they say it's 60% mental, 40% physical.
Yeah.
And so you can get if an athlete physically right, but it mentally has such a huge impact. And so my mindset or my thing is that, you have these, the top coaches, and you can see they don't always get it right. That, some athletes just arrive and they just have nothing. So I've always in the belief that if you can get to the event in good legs, you don't need brilliant legs, just have good legs that you're able to sort of dig deep. You got something in the legs, you're going to produce a good result.
Yeah, and you got that mental strength, and that's why riders, I suppose, go on a bit of a winning streak, because they just believe they can do it, and then when they do it, and it happens again, right? You get into a bit of a run. And what about other sort of areas of performance? We're starting to read things about breath work. Is that something that you did as a pro, or do you think that's something that some of the teams are looking at?
Well, we were quite, not necessarily old school, but quite simple. Like in AIS, we weren't even allowed caffeine, not even a can of Coke before the race. But something that we're going to be doing in Spok'd is really looking at the nutrition. So I'm really good mates with Charlie and Pete from Qualified Nutrition, and they coach a number of sort of pro athletes. But generally, cyclists underfuel dramatically.
Yeah.
So if we think, going fast on the bike requires carbs, and there's research out there that, you could be eating 90 to maybe 120 grams of carbs per hour. And that's a huge amount, because we're always in this mindset of power to weight, we've got to drop weight. And we always think, to drop weight, we'll cut out carbs. But I'm always sort of more performance first. In my career, I got caught up bad with food, had a bad relationship with it, but come out on the other side now. But something that we're going to be building into Spok'd is almost that based on your ride duration and intensity, have a guideline or a suggested guideline for the carbs that you should eat per hour. And based on your weight and the ride duration and the expected calories of the ride, recommend what you should eat before and after the ride, so there's no second guessing.
Yeah, that's important. I think what happened, well, I might be wrong, but I think so many people just get bits of information from social media, internet, and it can become quite dangerous, the food thing, right? It's for everyone, not just at elite level.
Oh yeah, you read a cycling news article that says Geraint Thomas has lost 3 kilos for the tour. You're thinking he's lost 3 kilos. I mean, I've got to lose 3. I've got at least 10 kilos to lose. That's nah, they're just So it's always performance first. Where are you doing the fundamentals? You're sleeping well. You're eating well. Are you training consistently, feeling good on the bike? If you sort of get these things right, it almost, the nutrition almost looks after itself to a certain degree. You have to be mindful of it, but it's just sort of getting into the routine.
You get in the routine, you get into the balance. And that's what I've always found so difficult. I think it's so easy to focus on hitting your sessions, but actually, and I also think that people just think nutrition and hitting the sessions equals performance, but just general life stress management and sleep quality, those two are equally as important as the other two as well. It sounds like your sort of future vision for Spok'd is building a more sort of holistic, looking at all these elements. Is that right?
100%. So a key experience that we're driving towards is that, let's just say you train every Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock, because we'll build in the auto sync, and Spok'd asks you, when do you go to bed? When do you wake up? And what is your quality of sleep? And then it starts identifying trends. So it starts identifying trends that every Tuesday, your sleep quality is poor, and Spok'd automatically adjust your Tuesday evening session. And then the following Saturday, as it's looked over the last 4 weeks, is it noticed that every Saturday you sleep like crap. And then you'll receive a notification. You go, hey, we noticed that you haven't been sleeping too well. Have you tried these 3 things? And then if you have a good Tuesday session, it'll reward you.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of technology and data and the way the world's moving, isn't it? To be able to do that. And I think that as humans, we can be we're not particularly conscious of why our performance fluctuates. And it can be, if you look at the data, it's probably quite obvious. And I didn't sleep that well last night, but I hadn't thought about that. I naturally blame the fact that it was something else.
100%.
Cool. Look, thank you both very much for taking the time to sit and chat to me. Rich, it sounds like a fantastic product. We look forward to hearing how Mark gets on over the next few weeks, and we'll all catch up again in 8 weeks' time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jules.
Brilliant. Anyone listening, do get in touch, and Rich's details will be in the show notes as well, so you can drop in an email, and I'm sure he'll be happy to help.
100%.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And more importantly, don't forget to download the Unfound app and join cyclists from around the world on the Hub. We'll see you on there.